Bueno, ya estamos en directo. Hola a todos, ¿qué tal? Perdona por el pequeño retraso, pero ya aquí estamos. ¿Qué tal estáis? Aquí una vez más haciendo nuestra live, haciendo nuestra sección de demostrando un poco lo que es todo lo que Cambly y hablando un poco de temas variados, ¿vale? Entonces, hoy vamos a hablar de algo muy interesante. Como son consejos para mejorar el inglés. Como si quieres hablar mejor, si quieres aprender un poco más del inglés, vamos a aprender unos consejos bastante interesantes hoy. Es algo que siempre hablamos en general, pero al final es algo que siempre vale la pena volver y hablar otra vez y oír principalmente de un nativo y aprender más con ellos. Y bueno, para los que ya me conocéis, soy Tiago, ¿vale? Encantado de estar aquí una vez más haciendo esta demostración de Cambly y creando este contenido para vosotros. Quiero decir una cosa antes, que estamos con una promoción hoy muy buena, ¿vale? Si queréis, aquí abajo está en el enlace, estamos ofreciendo un 35% de descuento, ¿vale? En todos los planes de Cambly. Entonces, aquí abajo hay más la descripción de lo que es esto, ¿vale? Pues aprovecháis. Bueno, nuestro tutor de hoy es alguien que muchos ya conocen, es alguien que ya hace muchas de estas lives con nosotros aquí, pero vamos a ir una vez más a oír un poco de él y conocerlo un poco mejor, ¿vale? So now we're going to speak English. Let's switch. Let's go to the main language and why we are here, right? So hi Guy,
Sounds
how are
good.
you? How are you? How are you doing?
Hey, Tiago. I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me on once again. Excited to have this chat with you. And yeah, life is good. Can't complain.
That's good. That's good to hear. I'm very glad. So before we start, I mean, I think most of the people here already know you. So, but for the ones who are just arriving here, the ones for the first time listening for one of our lives here, can you just introduce a little bit about you, say a little bit about yourself, your background, and well, a little bit. So, a little introduction.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Gui. I am Brazilian American, and I teach on Cambly. I've been teaching now for about a year, and I focus mostly on conversation. And I have students from everywhere in the world, and I love meeting new people and people from different backgrounds and different cultures, and talking about any and everything. Practicing interviews, just practicing for a test, or just getting to know each other and your likes and dislikes and your hobbies. My background is in fine arts, and I'm also a tattoo artist. So if you are into culture and you're into arts in any way, it's also a topic that I love discussing and love talking about. If you're an artist yourself, it would be really cool to help you improve your vocabulary, because there are some very specific words and some terms that are used in the art world. So it would be nice to help you in those into your bag of tricks, your bag of words. Yeah, so that sums it.
That's good. That's good. It's I think for everybody who are watching us here, we already did one live session, I think 2 weeks ago, and we were explaining about how to the universities and the college and all the university culture around Miami, where you graduated in Miami, right?
Yes, I studied in Palm Beach State College first, and we talked about a lot about this in the other video. You guys should go check it out if you're interested in what's the difference between college, university. So at first I did study at a college for 2 years. I graduated in graphic design, and after that I moved on to get my bachelor's in drawing and painting at the New World School of the Arts in Miami.
Mm-hmm. So that's good. So if you guys want to check it out, just go to our videos on our YouTube channel and just check it out there, because we have a lot of content, and this one in particular is very interesting, especially if you are thinking about going to and moving to United States to study there. So you should definitely check that out. And so, I mean, today we're going to discuss very interesting topics that are like these tips for us to learn English. So, how we can improve, how we can, I mean, how we can actually start talking and start learning and start communicating with everybody. And I think it's a very interesting thing. As you as a teacher, what is the most common thing that people come to you asking? It's like what's the number one doubt, or I don't know, for the ones who are starting to
Right.
learn English, what's the number one thing that they ask you about?
The most common question or issue
Yeah.
that students have across the board, because I get students who are learning very basic vocabulary, and I have students who have studied English in school and they have traveled, right? So they already have a better understanding. But throughout the board, the biggest concern or difficulty is speaking, like the actual practice of saying things out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And students might understand me really well. They watch their movies in English with English subtitles or no subtitle, listen to their favorite songs. You know, they watch some TV. They can understand 80-90% of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to speaking out their minds, their thoughts, the things that they want to express in this new language, they don't have that practice, because speaking is practice. So you do have to improve your hearing and your listening and your understanding, your writing, your grammar. But speaking is also something you have to practice. And it's hard to get that practice a lot of times because we don't have many people to speak with. Especially someone at a good level of English who you can speak with, and they might, understand you perfectly and be able to speak with you back, and also, give you, some advice or correct some mistakes. And it's why Cambly is so crucial, because it is a platform where you can have this active, engaged learning. So I defer to my students these two different types of learning: passive learning and active learning. The passive learning are ways that you can learn and improve, practice by yourself. So that could be watching a movie, that could be reading some lessons on a website or a course that you're taking. That could be writing down your thoughts, which is a great exercise, and I'll get more into that later. But the active learning, that is when it's a dialogue. It's not only you producing material and decoding material, you have someone you're engaging with. So not only do I have to understand what you are saying, but I have to be able to express it back to you in a way that you will understand, and vice versa, right? Because if I am watching a movie in English and I understand 80% of it, I would say that's pretty good, right? For someone who is beginning, who is learning.
Yeah.
But there might be that 20% didn't understand that might be crucial if that movie was supposedly in for a response, right? I'm not talking back with the characters in the movie, but let's imagine that we were. I think 80% is enough for the movie to go on, and I know what's going on. I'm keeping up with the narrative. But if I am in a dialogue, maybe that 20% will be enough for me to be lost and not really understand exactly what they're expecting me to answer, And it's that 20%, that you only practice that attention, that focus when you're actively learning. So it's crucial to have a tutor, a teacher, someone who's native that you can speak with, so that you can be engaged learning. It's not passive. I mean, passive is great on your free time. Perfect. You should be doing all of these things all of the time, right? But the active learning, the speaking, is the biggest problem. Students that understand English pretty well, and they have a very hard time speaking, just because they're not used to it.
Definitely. And if I had to write, I would write down. So the number one thing you think it's like speaking out loud. So it would be, I would just write it down here in the chat for the people to out loud. I'm not sure.
Speaking out loud, yeah.
Out loud, I can write it down all together out loud. It's one word or two words.
That could be 2 words. So when you're speaking out loud,
like that,
you're hearing your voice in English, and sometimes even that is strange for students.
Mm-hmm.
You're not used to hearing your voice in this new language, and it's like, and then you feel embarrassed. You feel embarrassed that you have an accent or you're saying something wrong. So you're very, restricted and contrived when you should let loose. When you're learning, you're supposed to be relaxed, and if I make some mistakes, that's okay. I will have things to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is strange at first, so you should also feel comfortable speaking out loud, like you said.
Yeah. So speaking out loud should be something that, and as you said, sometimes we get very, very frustrated because we are not able to express all our feelings, and we get like kind of, I'm not sure what we're going to do. I'm not sure if it will be the right thing to say, and we definitely have to get out of these thoughts and definitely start speaking and practicing, because it's the way that you will learn the most when you're practicing and making mistakes. So that's definitely one of the things that we should write it and definitely practice more. Don't forget to practice, guys. Don't forget it. It's the most important thing, as Gui just said, just to speak out loud. Put yourself in front of the mirror or record yourself. I don't know, do whatever you think it's the right thing for you, but don't forget to speak.
Right.
And
that's very good. If you don't have anyone to speak with, practice in front of a mirror, or do shadowing, right? Watch a TV show, and when the character says something, pause it and try to copy what he said, right? Try to say it in the same manner.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
All right. So I just saw that I just put it speaking out loud and not loud. So yeah, for everybody, it's loud with you. I will put it. We're going to put it in the comments here. Okay, correct. And so I think let me say I would like to ask you, what do you think about writing? Do you think it's an important thing? As you were saying, to write your thoughts, it's a very important. I think it's a very interesting thing. Can you give us some interesting perspective into that?
Yes, of course. Writing in English is crucial. To write things. So again, going back to that passive and active, we talked already about something you're learning by yourself or you're learning in a dynamic way. So another aspect is when you're learning by receiving information, right? So it's input, you're receiving. So you're reading and you're watching a movie, you're reading a book, you're reading, right? So this information, it's already coming packaged in the right format to you. Well, hopefully in the right format, right? There could always be mistakes and some typos, but if you're watching a movie in English, you're listening to a song, or you're reading a book, that book's been through a publisher and they already corrected all the mistakes. So you're receiving this perfect English towards you, right? So you're just having the work that you have is decoding that information, which is perfectly put, into your brain, into a format that you already know, right? Mm-hmm. You're translating that into your native language, or you're just understanding that message. But like I said, that message is already perfectly assembled, right? So when we are speaking or writing, it's output. It's not something we're receiving. It's something that we are putting out into the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's different because now it's not already packaged in a perfect format. Now you have to package it in that format yourself.
Uh-huh.
So you have to understand that format. You have to understand grammar. You have to understand syntax, right? And it's very different. So you might be great at reading English because you're used to reading it and it's all perfectly placed and you can understand it. You can decode it really well. You know what these words mean. You translate it into your native language. Might be Spanish, Portuguese, French, whatever. I understand this.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's time to write it or to speak it, like, I'm not really sure how to put these sentences together, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know exactly the order of the subject, the verb, the object, active voice, passive voice, like you're kind of lost. So writing and speaking, they're very similar in a way that they're both output, right? And the good thing about speaking is you have practice, right? Like, what is the goal for someone who is on Cambly? It's to speak English, right? Because you're going to travel, they need to speak in a call, in a conference, in a meeting, give a lecture. Their goal is to speak. So the best way to get good at speaking is through speaking. That's why it's so important, and that's why it was number 1 on our list.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a chance to be speaking all the time, well, we tend to speak and write the same way. You know? In writing, you might write it a little fancy, it might be a little more eloquent or something, a little more formal, depending on what type of writing it is. If it's a journal, or if it's just sending a message to a friend, or if you're writing a formal email. But in any case, we tend to speak the same way that we write. But when we write, we have a lot more time to think. When we are speaking right now in this call, it's real time.
Yeah.
I'm giving you information. The people at home watching on YouTube, they're waiting. They want to hear.
Yeah.
I don't have all the time in the world to think about the correct tense and how do I structure this, There's some pressure.
Definitely.
When you're writing, you don't have that pressure. I could sit here and really think about writing. Is this the right, tense for this verb? Am I conjugating it correctly? Right? Is this spelled correctly? Is this the right order? Is this sentence too long? Do I break it down? So you have time to really work on your output, because the better your output is, doesn't matter if you're speaking or writing, it's the way that you're constructing your thoughts. It's the way that you're expressing things in your brain into this language, right? It's the same. It's just that speaking is faster and you need to practice that. But writing is a great exercise for that as well, because you're practicing encoding things into this English format and not just receiving information. It's crucial. And I've been asking all my students, the ones that are watching me now, they know. It's not homework. I don't give my students homework. But I do ask them, possible, bring a short paragraph. Write something about your day. Write something about your weekend. Something about anything. It could be something you're planning on doing after the pandemic. It could be any thoughts. Write a few sentences, because that's very good for the tutors. Because when you bring something in writing, for us, it's simple and easy to see the mistakes. When we're talking throughout 30 minutes in a class, I pick up on different mistakes and I correct them as we go, but it's not so clear. It's not concise. And when you have something writing, it's like condensed. I can see the mistakes.
Yeah.
And sometimes that makes it easy to find a pattern. I'm like, he's making a common mistake. He's always using the past tense incorrectly. So now I know what we need to fix. We know what to improve. So it's a great exercise for the student, and it's also a great exercise for the class. So it's really good.
Very interesting. Very, very good topics. And before I continue with that, because I want to ask you one of the questions that we received here. I would like to say
Sure.
for everybody who is watching us now on Instagram, just go to the link that we put it on our bio and just click there, because we're going to continue just on YouTube. So if you're on Instagram, just switch and look for the link and go to the YouTube, because we're going to continue just there. Okay? So see you soon. Don't forget us. And well, so that was so very interesting topics and very interesting ways to learn. And I think we just received actually we received a few minutes before, but it was from Juan Florencianes, and he asked if we could do like tips for to study. And I think this what he just gave us, it's a very interesting tip to study, to practice, to write down your thoughts and something, and bring for your tutor or bring for one of your friends and try to correct those. So it's a very interesting tip to write down your thoughts and it could be a diary or something, right? As you said, it could be anything. Just to
Right.
express something and see how it goes. I think it will be very interesting. So Juan, just practice that. Try to write something. Maybe write down here in the comments, and we're going to look for it. And that could be a great idea, right? So everybody who's watching us, write down something here in the comments from the YouTube video before the live session, not here in the live chat. Write down in the comments here. I think it will be a very great idea, and then we're going to look up for the mistakes and see what happened. What is, if you guys are good or not. And
Interesting. We could do a live corrections.
That would be interesting.
Live corrections.
So I will put it here. So the number 2 thing for everybody, just to be writing. Writing. Am I put it good. Right? I spelled it right? I think it is, right?
That's correct.
So, I mean, as we are already, like, we are practicing speaking out loud. We are now writing down our thoughts. And I think one of the other things that, if you really want to write good poems or good whatever, I think we have to read. So what do you think about reading? It's a good exercise. It is interesting. What are your thoughts about reading?
Yeah, I think it's great exercise. Like I was saying, there are these different components to language. There are the signifiers, there are the signified, right? So words and what they mean. And we have to understand both.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to understand all these parts, all these components of any language, right? The number 1 and 2, I think they're the outputs, right? We order them first because I think these are the components that people lack the most. It's not that they're the most important. All these parts are equally important, right? Mm-hmm. You can't write if you don't know how to read. And you can't talk if you don't know what you're listening, right? Because they're all the same. It's all the same language.
Mm-hmm.
You're using the same alphabet. You're using the same syntax. So the reason why number 1 and 2 were outputs is because I think people are already used to reading and listening more frequently, because that is more available, right? You turn on Netflix or YouTube and you're going to listen to things in English. You're going to buy a book, or you receive an email, or you're going to read. But that doesn't mean it's not important. It's just that it's more available.
Mm-hmm.
We already have that in a higher frequency in our lives. But it's super important. And reading, exactly like you said, even in your native language, you observe that people who read more, they tend to better. And if you write better, you tend to speak better, right? One thing carries the other. So reading is super important, and gives you clues into other interesting ways that people put together their sentences, because there isn't just one right way, right? And people may construct their thoughts in very different ways with rhymes or rhythm, using a lot of analogies, metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you read, the more you get a sense of these different types of writing, first person, second person, it really broadens your horizons to language, to that syntax, because there isn't just one way to do things. So it's really good. And it broadens your vocabulary, because if you're reading, you will come across new words all the time, and you can highlight those, you can mark them down, look in the dictionary, look in the internet, try to find some examples of it being used in context, in a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great. Yeah, so reading is really good, for sure.
Yeah, I don't have it, but I stayed a few weeks with a Amazon Kindle, like the digital book from Amazon. It's quite interesting because while I was reading, I could select one word and do like a research. So it would be connected to a Wi-Fi and then do a research what that word means. So that was very interesting because sometimes I do that, as you say, like to highlight the word and go to the internet and do like a little research and pick a phone and just Google it. But it was quite interesting to see how actually it works. So for everybody, if you guys have a Kindle, it's quite interesting to read a book in English and just select these words that you're not understanding and just see the dictionary there, and then they will give you some examples and explain you a little bit more about these specific words. So it was quite interesting. So
awesome. Yeah, that's a great feature. So if you fly, look up, what this means and how else could this be used, or give another example or synonym. So that's a very cool feature.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I would like to say one thing as well, that is like hearing it, as you were saying, like here it's one common thing. It's more available. We can can listen through music, to Netflix, and a lot of different types of podcasts, or a lot of things available online that you can listen to it. So that's one of the reasons I think we put these like to speaking out loud, just writing and then reading and then listening, because it's still a very important part of this process. So what is your thoughts about like listening? What do you have to do something specific? And because here, for example, it's a I think I gave this example before, that here in Spain we have these, all the movies that we watch, they were not coming with subtitles. They are just like I forgot how to say it in English. It's not in the original audio. I mean, how can I say that?
Right, they're dubbed.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that we miss, this hearing part of the English. So what was an interesting thing that for reading or for listening? For listening. Sorry.
Yeah. So relationship between reading and listening, I guess it's kind of similar to how we talked about writing and speaking, right? Because writing and speaking, they're both output. Reading and listening, they're input. You're receiving information. When we are reading, the words are frozen in time, right? We can read it as many times as we want, and we can read it in the pace that we choose. So you can read very slowly. If you're an advanced reader, you can read faster, but we're in control of the situation. And the English syntax, it's kind of perfect in front of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like when you're writing, you have time to develop and correct mistakes. And if you're able to talk, then it's like we have that pressure element that we talked about. Mm-hmm. Listening is kind of the same, because listening is real time. So if you don't understand one word well and you're kind of thinking about it, you're missing the other words in the sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So, your ears have to be very aware, and it is a little more difficult. So you need to train your ear. Another aspect of listening that makes it more difficult is we have some other elements involved. One being noise, right? Noise is any type of sound that is being maybe in our environment. The fan is on. Maybe there's some birds hooting outside. There's people shouting. There are cars, traffic. There could be a million different things that are making noise all the time. And that noise is kind of interfering with the sounds of the words that we're actually trying to pay attention to, right? It's like if you're trying to watch a movie, but there's a very loud fan on, and you can't really hear the characters, because it's like, and the fan is kind of interfering. When you're reading, you don't really have that unless you're reading something that is handwritten and someone scribbled very fast. Then it's kind of hard to read, right? But, if it's like a book or an email, the characters, everything is very nicely laid out. So it's pretty simple and easy to read. So when we are listening, a lot of times we have to deal with noise. So right now I'm speaking in a microphone. So my sound is a little, lost a tiny bit of quality to go into my laptop, travel through the internet, to come out of, your speakers or the people at home. There's noise through all of that. So it makes it a little harder because of the noise. It's harder also because it's real time, it's fast, and it's also hard because people have different accents. When you're reading, you're not really reading accents. You can kind of pick up on accents because of mannerisms, right? The way that something is written, I might identify that, I think this person is British, or I think this person is from the Midwest, because they write it in a little way that has some subtleties that sound characteristic to that place. So you can kind of read it with an accent, but it's not really interfering with your reading. You can just read it plainly. And when we're speaking, you're speaking right now with a Native American speaker. You could be speaking with someone who is British, someone who's Australian, South African, or a Korean person who learned English and has a Korean accent, right? Or a Brazilian, or from anywhere, right? So the Englishes, they're different. They have different accents. So your ear has to be even better trained to understand them. And that comes with practice. So listening, and again, I think most people want to be fluent in English so they can have conversations, right? So they can communicate. Of course, that doesn't stop you from writing and from reading, sending emails, exchanging text messages. That's all part of communication. But I think the dream in the student's head is to meet someone who speaks English, maybe it's an American, and you can communicate with them flawlessly. That's the dream, right? And that happens with speaking and hearing. So I think these are the two parts that you should have the most emphasis, especially during a communication. Because again, it goes to that passive and active learning. I can listen to a record or a podcast and understand 80% of it and feel great, because 80% I kind of know what they talked about. There are some interesting things. But if I am speaking with someone, then again, I'm expected to understand more than 80% because I have to dialogue with them. But listening is it's very available. So it's a good element to study and to practice, because you can do it in different ways. And usually you can just watch a movie and lay back. So it doesn't really require as much attention, which could be tricky. But it's something that is more available. So there shouldn't be an excuse to not practice your listening.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more with you. It's something that is out there. You just can find it on Netflix, on YouTube, or any place, and podcasts, and there's a million ways to practice there. And it comes to one thing that it's quite interesting, that right before, as you were saying, like the differences between the accents. and that it's super. It's probably one of these other things that comes. This next tip that comes to exactly, maybe that's probably not the tip number 5. Could be the tip 4.1, because I think it's the two are very connected. That it's because I think the accent it's super important. Depending if you want to just have a conversation with people from United States, you can practice just from people from America. And but if you want to move to England, you should practice with people from like British tutors, because you will definitely notice the difference between the English. And I think it's these little sauce that you were saying that is super important, that you have to practice to learn and listen to these small differences between English. Sometimes when you call, like this became very famous, you call like all these call centers around the world, this telemarketing stuff, and it will be an Indian guy just talking to you. He could talk a very good English, but he has his own accent, and it's definitely like that. The Chinese, it's became very very well known as well, because they have maybe their own English, so it's kind of interesting. So this kind of accent, it's quite important as well. It came very like in the same way, the same level of listening, right?
Yeah, because you have accent from other people that you're listening to, and you have your own accent, right? Being even natives have their own accent, right? So yeah, it's tricky. There is a difference between accent and pronunciation. I tell all my students that you should focus on pronunciation so that you can speak things correctly and clearly. And with that, you will have some type of accent along with it. But a native person or someone else will be able to understand you because you're pronouncing it correctly. The accent is a characteristic voice and how you sound specific consonants, you know. It's like something a little peculiar. If it's not too heavy, you shouldn't really interfere so much with understanding the message. And of course, it might take some getting used to, because there are some accents that are very different. I'm saying within United States, there are many different accents. And if people are speaking in a, not super slow, but if they're speaking, in a normal way, and you're pronouncing things out nicely, it shouldn't really make a difference to you in to understand them and communicate with them. But if you go to South Africa, I know the accent is different, so you might have some adaptation.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why it's good, like you said, to get used to listening to these different accents, so your ear is better and it's ready to interpret no matter what accent comes at you. The English is the same, right? So you just kind of have to filter a little bit of the accent to understand their pronunciation and understand what they're saying, and you shouldn't have a problem. It's like you can write in so many different fonts, right? We have like Helvetica, which is kind of like Arial. We have Times New Roman. We have like sans serif fonts, serif fonts. We have Bookly fonts. We have all these different fonts, but they still spell out the same words, right? So you should be able to read a book no matter what font it's written in. Some fonts are harder to read. They're harder to understand. They're super elaborate, like Old English, right? They have all these frills, but it's still written in English. Yeah. Right? So the accent, this is a horrible example, but I guess it's kind of the same. Like, it's still the same words. It's still English. It just has these different characteristics to it. And definitely. Yeah, if you already have a goal in mind, I'm moving to the UK in a year. Practice 90% with British tutors or British friends or whoever you can practice with, right? Definitely. But like, it's interesting, like you said. I have this has happened many times with me before. But I remember one specific student. He lived in Dubai. He was from Saudi Arabia. And he said, "Hey, Guy, I understand you perfectly. 100%. You speak, very calmly. Good pronunciation, a native speaker. So I can understand 100%. I have no problem. But what happens is I work in a multinational company, and my team is a person from India. It's a person from Korea. There are two Arabs. So there's like not one native speaker in the team, but the common language between all of us is English. So you have, people who are not necessarily native speakers. They might be somewhat fluent. They might speak pretty well, but none of them are native. All of them have a very thick accent from their own different countries. So he says, I get very confused because I'm listening to an input from someone with a Chinese accent, and in the next sentence, someone with an Indian accent, and then I have my accent. And,
Wow.
I think it's complicated. How do you work on that?
Yeah.
So and also accent, it's not something that you can easily to someone, hey, lose your accent. This is how you do it. It's super hard, because it's a characteristic of your voice. It's the way that you shape your mouth to make sounds. It has to do with your native tongue. If you speak like from Madrid, right, you guys use a lot of the lisp, like with your tip of your tongue. And to not do that in English, it's pretty difficult. You've been speaking that way your whole life. And Chinese make very different sounds.
Yeah.
A French person makes very different sounds. Someone from Scandinavia makes very different sounds. It's almost impossible to lose that unless you learn English from a very young age simultaneously with your native tongue. Then the less chances of having a strong accent. But since it's not so easy, it's something that with time you will lose a little bit. It gets better with time. But it shouldn't really be your goal, because your goal should be in pronunciations. So whatever it is, your accent, as long as you can pronounce things correctly, slowly, in a manner that is easy for people to understand, then your accent is just kind of like a character with your voice. It's just like a personality.
Yeah.
And
they do, like the journalists and all those guys that presents on TV. They do a lot of. They have classes to take out the accent, right? It's something.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. It's actually very complicated. They have people who study that.
Right. They're removing the accent from their native tongue. So they're already natives. So it's kind of like I forget exactly right now the what it's called, the professional who's responsible for sounds. A lot of children and people. From a young age, they have maybe a harder time speaking and pronouncing things correctly.
Yeah. I don't know as well.
I know the word in Portuguese right now. In English, I'm forgetting it. So there might be some specialists who are better suited. It's not even a matter of English, of tutoring. It's a matter of like relearning how to make sounds, and so that exists. Yeah, but. You brought up a good point. So when you watch like CNN News or Fox News, or you watch like most of Hollywood movies, that most of the dialogue is used in a very standard English, American English, if it's an American movie. And of course, that's not true. When you go to America, you have many different accents. If you're watch like a Western movie about cowboys, they might use more of a Western accent because they're in character. But if it's not something specific, if it's just like a general movie about like just normal everyday things, like a horror movie or a suspense or comedy, people usually are speaking in a very standard American accent, right? And they do that so it is easier for everyone to understand.
Yeah.
But of course, you have some times where there might be a very specific character who is from a very specific part of the country, and then he will sound the accent a little thicker.
Yeah. That's something that you definitely need to practice, and that's that thing. Just go listen and practice. And it comes to one of the other things that probably is the last tip that it's on our list, that is to think in English. I think if we have like this, I just forgot to send these here just for people to realize that. And I think when you start to think and dream, I think a lot of people say that a lot. You're just going to be on a good level of the language that you were learning when you start to dream when you on these language. So if you, I think it's a very interesting point, and I think we have to switch a lot of these small things that we do every day for us to start thinking about that. And one of the things that I did, it's to one of the first things that I did is just to switch the language on my phone, just to Spanish to English, just like that. It would it made me realize those small things. Okay, so I have to look for something. I was like, what is that? And, the settings, what is that? I need to it helped me in these small things. And what do you think about this? And start to thinking and dreaming in English or in the language in general, but we're specific in English.
Right. I think that's a good point. It happens with some people. With some people, I guess it doesn't. Depending on your level and the frequency that you use your English, you might be someone who is very much a scholar, right? You're someone who is very studious. You understand things well. You like to learn things properly. And you have a great understanding of the language English. But you don't necessarily use it so frequently to where it really sips into your subconscious. So you don't dream in English and you don't think in English, but you're still super good in speaking English. You're like very fluent, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know that dreaming and thinking in English is necessarily a prerequisite for being a fluent speaker. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know that. But I think it's kind of like it's a byproduct of becoming fluent. It's not that you have to start thinking, like force yourself into thinking in English and dreaming in English, which like, how do you even control what you dream? You know, that to me seems pretty impossible. So it's not like, oh, I have to like find a way to dream in English so then I will be fluent. It's the other way around, you know. Yeah. You have to just practice and infuse it in your life so much. Immersion, right? Yeah. You need to be immersed in that language. Then it starts sipping into your subconscious. So then you will think out loud in English and you will like have conversations and prepare for things in English. If I ever show you like notes, I scribble a lot of notes every day at home, like things that I'm thinking about, things that I have to do, things that are ready, you know, took care of. And it's pretty crazy. It starts in English and it'll go to Portuguese and I'll cross it out and write in English without even realizing it. I don't pay attention to that. It's because in my brain, they're equally native. You know, they operate equally in my brain. So how I choose to write it at that time, it's just the way it comes out, you know. And then it depends on the context. If I'm like, you know, maybe writing something in someone who is Brazilian with me, and I guess I'm more inclined to write that in Portuguese, of course. And if, you know, I'm speaking with some American friends or my father, then I guess it's more inclined to come out in English. But, you know, there's not like, they're kind of like the same. But that, you know, that's, I don't think that's something you can really force to happen. I think it's something that will happen as a byproduct of you immersing yourself in English. And of course, it's great when it happens because you tend to stop translating so much from your native tongue into English. You kind of can start operating directly your thoughts into English. That's like the main goal, I think. That's like the dream objective. It's so that you don't have to translate from your, like, so if I want to express a thought to you, I don't have to think it in Portuguese and then translate it into English so I can deliver it to you. I just have a thought and it goes into the English filter directly, you know. So how do we do that? I think, like I said, it's trying to, and you said it as well, try to implement English as much as you can in your life and in your day, in your routine. So you change your phone to English. So how many times a day do we look at our phone?
A lot.
1,000 times. Some people are more connected to it, some people less.
Mm-hmm.
But even someone who doesn't use it that much looks at their phone, I would guess easily 50 times a day, easily, without even realizing it.
Yeah.
So it's 50 times that you're looking at it and navigating through it in English, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the suggestion I give to my students, write something in English every day. So that's another part of your day you're using English.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch a movie or a podcast late at night, and it's in English. So you're using English again.
Yeah.
And then you do your 30 minutes, your hour, your 15 minutes on Cambly. A lot of English.
Yes.
And then you write down some notes, things that you have to do. Or you have like Post-it notes. I don't know what they're called in Spain, but they're like these little colored notes that have a little bit of glue, like a sticker.
Mm-hmm.
And you can stick on things so you can remember things. So I've seen a lot of YouTube videos of, natives suggesting people to write down of objects and household items in English and just post it on things. So you might post one on your door. You might post one on your TV. You might post one over your bed, on your wall, ceiling.
That's interesting.
In your kitchen. You might put cereal, milk, fridge. So what happens is you're kind of forcing your brain to think about English in any different levels, but throughout your whole day. Because we are creatures of habit, right? Our brains kind of operate in patterns. So, a very straightforward pattern is our sleep cycle, right? So we usually are awake for the same amount of hours every day, and then we sleep at that same amount of hours, right? That's a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And then we usually go to work while we are awake. We could go to work for the same hours usually every day. And then we have our leisure time the same amount of hours. Mm-hmm. So that's another pattern. Yeah. So our brain starts creating patterns. So if you listen to a podcast for 30 minutes every day, it's great exercise, but your brain will create a pattern. Mm-hmm. And you will say, I need English for 30 minutes every day at 8 o'clock. Uh-huh. And then after that, I don't really need it so much. Right? So it brings it to the front of your mind when you're using it. And for the rest of your day, it goes back in line, because you're engaged with the other things. That's how our brain works. So the more you can keep bringing English back to the front, the more you're keeping it on. You're like, hey, there's no pattern here. Like, I need you.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I need you on all the time because I'm listening to a podcast. I'm going to write something. I'm going to do Cambly. I'm going to watch some tips on Cambly talks in YouTube, I'm keeping it on. And then before I go to bed, I'm going to pull out my book that is in English and my phone is in English. And I've been practicing with my girlfriend or your boyfriend or your whoever, your parents, your family. You have a group on WhatsApp. You guys are starting to practice in English. Hey, now your brain is in English. What happens when you go to sleep? The English is kind of still lingering, you know? Yeah. So have you ever done too much of a thing right before you go to sleep?
And then you
dream about it? It happens to me all the time. If I tattoo very late at night and I get home, take a shower, eat something, and go to sleep, I will dream about that tattoo all night. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I think that's how you get the English more into your subconscious, to where you're thinking, to where you're dreaming. You have to find ways to keep it operating in your brain. And of course, it's easier said than done, because if there is no English at all at your work, and you're at work for 8 hours a day, that's kind of like 8 hours where you have to try to find little clever ways to keep English on. So that might be the Post-it notes. That might be the settings on your phone, right?
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. This Post-it thing is a very interesting topic. Start putting Post-its everywhere. And I mean, it's, as you said, I think it's practicing and writing, reading, listening. Just keep doing it. It's a way to get to the level of thinking and go dreaming in English, and it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And we didn't actually have too much of the comment, and we received a lot, but we we were so deep here in the conversation. We'd like to ask you one of the questions here. Could be like the last questions for us to finish this session. And it's from Christian, and he asked, about what's the key to set up a conversation without being nervous. Because I understand what I listen to, but for me, it's still tough to speak, still difficult to speak. So that's an interesting thing. That's one of the things that we were talking a lot about here. So what's the your tip to him?
All right. Um, Interesting question. Thank you very much for sending your question. It's very good. We have done a whole lesson, right, Tiago?
Yeah.
About overcoming your fears of speaking in English. So you might want to go check that out because it will be way more complete than this brief answer that I can give you now.
Yeah.
A very interesting question. Please go check out that video. It will be very helpful.
It is on our YouTube channel. Just go there and check all the videos and you will see it.
Nice. Yep. And I think we're naturally nervous about things that we don't have full control of and full understanding. So, you know, if it's anything new, you're starting a new sport, you're starting a new job, you're meeting someone for the first person, we naturally tend to feel nervous. Some people feel more than others, but I think that's natural. So I think the easiest answer, I guess, is just keep practicing, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you are. Don't let your fear stop you from advancing. You have to break through that initial fear or that initial nervousness, right? That doesn't last forever. That's just like in the beginning, you know? Yeah. So the faster you can let go of your fears and just face them and do your best, the faster you will break through that phase, and then you will just feel more comfortable, and then you won't even think about it. Mm-hmm. I think fear is a lot associated with the fear of making mistakes, and the fear of how people will react to your mistakes. Mm-hmm. And my answer to that is, you're not a native speaker, so it's not your job to speak English fluently. You know, it's not your first language. You're learning. Mm-hmm. So you shouldn't be afraid, or you shouldn't be afraid of people laughing at you. You shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes, because mistakes happen. You know, we make mistakes in our native language. You know, it happens. Yeah. So it's especially okay if it's not your native language and you're learning. You know, if you're going to learn how to play the guitar, you're going to play a bunch of bad songs, and your brothers are going to hate you for a little bit until you eventually get really good. But if you pick up the guitar for the first time and you play some notes and they don't sound that great, and then you're hesitant to ever pick up the guitar again, you will never break through that initial nervousness, that initial fear, right? So I think it's these two things. One, it's practice. The more you do it, the easier and more natural it will feel. And also letting go of the expectation and the fear of how others will react. Mm-hmm. And the third is, the more mistakes you make, the faster you learn. So be good to make mistakes.
Definitely. And it's just, we just received a comment here that asks just this exact thing. And Carmen, and she asked about what's the level of English that I need to have to practice with a native person. So it's just like that. You don't need to be advanced or whatever. You just need to practice, I think, right? It's more or less what you were just saying, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and depending on your level, we might practice different ways. So if your level is already, like, let's say, intermediate and above, we might jump into more of conversation about daily topics. And of course, I'll make many corrections as we go, because you will make many mistakes, and those are good. I can correct your mistakes. And making mistakes, you know, I'll correct you once. You will make that same mistake again 3, 4, 5 times. And it's the repetition of me fixing your mistakes that eventually sticks. And you're like, oh, now I remember. I won't, you know, you learn. That's how we learn. Yes. If your English is not like an intermediate or advanced, it's still very basic, we will practice, and we will talk about simpler ideas, of course. What is your name? Where are you from? You know, how are you feeling, or simpler ideas. How old are you? And when you get that basic introduction English, we might start using the Cambly lessons. We have a lot of lessons in our library, and these are good to expand the vocabulary and expand the language for the student while we conversate. So it's not just, you're not expanding the lessons just by typing it and write it down. You're expanding them while you conversate, right? So you're having conversation while you're learning the structure, right? And we have lessons like introducing yourself, speaking about your job, speaking about your goals, ordering food at a restaurant. There's like all kinds of things which are pretty basic. Another way that we can practice is by reading articles together. So this is a great way for you to practice your speaking. Although you're speaking from a written article, you're not speaking that output we talked about early in the lesson today, where you're expressing your ideas. You're still getting comfortable with your voice. You're still learning to pronounce things correctly. You're learning syntax. You're learning rhythm while you speak. And these will be important tools for you to be able to speak your thoughts too, right? So there are many different ways that we can practice, even though your English is not, super advanced, where we can have conversations like I am having with you now. That's not a prerequisite. We can literally start from any point, from any level.
That's super interesting. And she just put it here. Thanks for answering. And if I have not nobody to practice English, what should I do? Can I get good English in 6 months? You definitely can. If you just, I would just say, just if you want to have a good level of English, just go here and click on the link in the description, because we're just offering 35% discount on all our plans here on Cambly. So if you don't have anyone to practice on Cambly, you will find a lot of people and the best tutors in the world. If you want to practice American English or British English or Australian or whatever, you will find the tutor that best suits you. And if you want to just have a class with Gui, I just put it here in the description as well, his link to his profile, and then you can just go there and send him a message and have a class with him. Just use the code here to take your free class, the first free class, and have a class with him. I think you will enjoy a lot, and I think it's the best way. So just practice in 6 months, you can definitely have a good level of English. You will probably not be like a super native advanced in 6 months. Is not like that. I know that it's a lot of people selling a lot of things online now that you'll be fluent and whatever in 3 months or whatever. But it's not like that. You have to practice the everyday thing. You just have to put a lot of effort into what you were doing. Right, Guy?
Right.
Am I right?
You're right. And to make a good point to what you were saying, being fluent in English, it's not like it's a skill that you have acquired and it's kind of here somewhere in your mind, and you can kind of just use it whenever you want, and then it's just turned off, You're going to become fluent because you're using it so much.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're a great chef, it's not because you know how to cook super well, but you're barely cooking. If you're an amazing chef, it's because you live in it.
Yeah.
You're cooking every day. You're in the kitchen. You're making recipes. You're taking out orders. You're learning. You're studying. You're trying out new spices and new everything. New techniques, and you're immersed in it. It's not like, I'm the best chef in the world, but I cook once a month. That doesn't exist. So like for someone who wants to be native, or not native, but fluent in English, that means that you have to be doing it. You have to be in it. You have to be studying. You have to invest in your knowledge. You have to be practicing. It's not so some people have this idea that, it's something that you just kind of learn, and it's kind of here. It's pretty accessible. I just use it when I kind of feel like I need it. And it's kind of, that's not it. For you to become fluent in anything in life, that means that it has to be a big part of your life.
Yeah.
You have to be really committed. You can learn great levels of English so that you can answer some emails at work. Not everyone has to become fluent. That's another point that I want to make.
Yeah.
Maybe you have no English and you're like, Gui, I need enough so that I can answer these emails at work. We're starting to get some international, clients, and I need to be able to answer them and to make it to maybe make a presentation in English. Then great, that's awesome. That's great. We'll help you. Not everyone needs to become a chef. Maybe you just need to learn how to cook so you can cook for yourself and your wife or whatever.
Yeah.
The goal is to eventually become fluent because it's great. It opens so many opportunities. You'll be able to travel. You'll probably go up in your job. So I think, although it might not be your goal in the beginning, I think once you start getting better, you will strive for that. But, you have to be doing it. And Cambly, we have so many great tutors from all walks of life. So there are English tutors who are, educated in English language. There are tutors like myself who are artists. There are tutors, there are engineers, architects. So depending on your field and what you work with, you can find a tutor that can help you practice that specific vocabulary.
Yeah.
And he has common ground with you, so you'll really be able to engage, And we have the lesson plans that we can do. You can watch your lessons again so you can practice your pronunciation, see the mistakes that you made. You can repeat after your tutor. It's just it's amazing, And for someone who doesn't have the opportunity to move to the United States or to England or another country that speaks English, if you don't have that opportunity to be fully immersed, I honestly can't see a better tool than Cambly. So
that's super true. Couldn't agree more with you. And I think that we come to the end of this session for today. I think we gone through a lot of very interesting topics, a lot of interesting things. If you guys want to just write it down, all those things, and just don't forget to practice. It's the most important thing. And I think it was very nice. So thank you, Gui, very much for having us here one more time.
Thank you, Thiago.
It was amazing. Thank you, everybody, for your questions and everything. Don't forget the links for the promotion here. It's the link. It's under here. We just put it in the comments as well. We have links for Gui's profile. It's here as well. So thank you guys very much, and see you guys next week. Okay, if you have any ideas or anything, just put it here in the comments that we can definitely discuss about it. And don't forget to put some likes in here as well. Okay, so see you guys next week. Hasta luego. And Yugi, bye bye. See you soon.
All right, thank you very much. Take care.